Imagine standing in a cold, brightly lit courtroom.
Oh, that is never a good place to start.
Right. It's a total nightmare. The commercial brig you designed just failed.
Wow. Okay, high stakes.
Very high stakes. And you're on the stand, but you're actually feeling completely confident.
Because your math was flawless.
Exactly. Your math was flawless. You followed the national engineering standards to the absolute letter. You even brought the manual with you to court.
Like a shield.
Like a shield, yeah.
Yeah.
But the judge just looks at you, shakes their head, and hands down this massive civil penalty that effectively ends your career.
Yeah, and that happens more than people think.
It does. And why does it happen? All because you didn't know whose rulebook actually mattered in that specific province on that specific day.
That is the ultimate trap right there.
It really is. So if you're listening to this deep dive right now, you are likely preparing for the NPPE, the National Professional Practice Exam.
Which is a beast of an exam.
A total beast. And, you already have the technical skills. The math, the science, the physics.
You wouldn't be here if you didn't.
Right. But today, our mission is to completely decode the legal labyrinth of professional practice in Canada.
Which is, let's just say it's complicated.
Very. We're going to figure out definitively who has the legal authority to create, adopt, and enforce the codes and standards that govern engineering and geoscience.
Because getting the math right just isn't enough.
It's not. Not if you don't know the mechanics of the law you're bound to follow. But hey, real quick, before we decode this labyrinth, I need to ask you to take a quick second to become a member with exclusive content for NPPE, and also like and subscribe to hear more about the NPPE exam and help us to keep posting.
It really makes a massive difference for us.
It totally does. We have a huge amount of ground to cover to get you ready, so let's just jump right in.
Sounds good. And the courtroom scenario you just described,
Yeah.
that happens way more often than anyone in the profession would like to admit.
Really? Just from misunderstanding the rules?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the topic seems straightforward until you're actually sitting in an office, right? You're staring at this massive stack of guidelines, trying to figure out if a specific document is just a really good idea, or if ignoring it will literally cost you your license.
And your livelihood.
Exactly. The legal environment for professionals in Canada is highly structured. Understanding the mechanics of that structure is essential not just for passing the NPPE, but, for surviving your career.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute basics, because before we can talk about who is making the rules, we have to isolate the types of rules you're going to encounter.
Right. The terminology is key here.
Yeah, because people throw the words standard and code around like they're just synonyms.
Which they definitely are not.
Right. So I always picture it like this. Tell me if this analogy works.
Let's hear it.
I like to think of a standard as a recipe for a perfect chocolate cake, developed by this global committee of top pastry chefs.
Okay. Making me hungry, but keep going.
It's got the exact proportions, the best baking time. It is a brilliant document.
The ideal way to do things.
Yes. But a code is the city health inspector showing up at your bakery and legally demanding you bake that cake to a specific internal temperature, or they chain your doors shut.
That actually perfectly captures the baseline legal distinction.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, standards are essentially technical consensus documents. They're developed by recognized bodies like the CSA or ISO, usually through a really rigorous process among subject matter experts.
This is basically the top minds getting together in a room.
Exactly. They specify requirements, testing methods, or characteristics for materials and systems. They represent the collective, cutting-edge wisdom of the profession.
The pastry chef's advice.
Right, the advice. Because inherently, on their own, standards are entirely voluntary.
Wait, voluntary? So how does that advice transform into a mandate? How does a standard get handed over to the health inspector?
Well, that's the crucial pivot.
Because, engineers deal with standards all day long that feel incredibly mandatory.
They do. But a standard only gains the teeth of the law under two very specific mechanisms.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is if a government entity incorporates it into legislation or regulation. When a law says you must comply with this specific standard, the state has effectively weaponized that advice.
Weaponized advice. I like that.
Yeah, they've turned it into a legal code. The second mechanism is private contract.
Oh, so if I sign a document with my client.
Precisely. If you sign an agreement promising to build a facility to a specific voluntary ISO standard, you have voluntarily bound yourself to it.
So through the law of contract, That standard is now legally enforceable against me.
Exactly. You made it mandatory for yourself.
Okay, so if making a standard legally binding is just a matter of a government entity flipping a legislative switch,
Right.
the immediate danger for any professional is assuming the wrong person flipped it.
And that happens all the time.
So who actually holds the constitutional power to mandate these codes? Because looking at Canada as a whole, wouldn't it just make sense to have one massive centralized federal rulebook for every engineer and geoscientist?
It would certainly make things simpler.
Right, like gravity works the exact same way in Alberta as it does in Nova Scotia.
Gravity does, yes. But soil conditions don't.
True.
Economies don't. And most importantly, the Canadian Constitution doesn't.
The Constitution always getting in the way of a simple answer.
Always. The Constitution Act of 1867 strictly divides legislative sovereignty between the federal government in Ottawa and the provincial governments.
Right, the division of powers.
Yes. And under that division, provinces are granted exclusive constitutional authority over property and civil rights, as well as local works and undertakings.
Okay, I see. So because engineering and geoscience fundamentally deal with property construction and local infrastructure, the regulatory power just naturally defaults to the provinces.
Precisely. It is almost entirely a provincial responsibility.
So licensing, discipline, all of that.
All of it. The regulation of the professions themselves, creating the regulatory bodies, defining what actually constitutes the practice of engineering, issuing licenses that's provincial.
Ontario regulates Ontario professionals.
And British Columbia regulates British Columbia professionals. Consequentially, the provinces are the entities that enact the heavy hitter codes.
The ones that really impact daily work.
Yeah. Building codes, fire codes, electrical codes, and occupational health and safety regulations, all provincial.
Wait, does the federal government have any say at all? Or are they just completely locked out of the engineering space?
No, they're not locked out, but they are restricted to very specific constitutionally defined lanes.
Like what?
You will only answer to federal statutes if your project crosses into federal jurisdiction.
Give me an example of that.
Sure. Interprovincial and international trade, aeronautics, navigation and shipping, nuclear energy, criminal law, and works on federal lands or military bases.
Okay, so let me make sure I have this straight. If I'm designing a standard commercial warehouse in Calgary, I'm answering to the province of Alberta.
Correct.
But if I'm designing a runway at an international airport or, containment vessel for a nuclear reactor, suddenly I'm operating under federal statutes.
And federal safety commissions. That is the exact jurisdictional boundary you have to identify at the very start of any project.
Wow. Okay, but hold on. There is a massive contradiction here that I think trips up a lot of people studying for the NPPE.
Oh, what's that?
You just said building codes are strictly provincial domain, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But I constantly hear professionals referencing the National Building Code or the National Fire Code.
Yes, the national codes.
Yeah. If a document has the word national printed in bold letters right on the cover, doesn't that imply it's the supreme law of the land everywhere in Canada?
That label is arguably the biggest trap in Canadian professional practice.
Wait, really? A trap?
It's a huge trap. The documents you're talking about are officially called National Model Codes. The key word there is model.
Model, so like a template.
Exactly. They are essentially highly detailed templates.
So they aren't actually laws.
Not inherently, no. They are developed at the national level by expert commissions to promote uniformity across the country.
Which makes sense.
It makes massive economic sense to have a shared baseline for construction. But constitutionally, the federal government cannot force a province to adopt a building code.
Because of that property and civil rights clause we talked about.
Exactly. Therefore, a national model code is completely advisory.
Wow. Just a very strong suggestion.
Basically, it only becomes law when a specific province or territory officially passes legislation to adopt it.
But doesn't that completely defeat the purpose of having a national code in the first place?
How so?
Well, if every province can just take the template and tinker with it, how is a manufacturer supposed to design standard structural components if the rules change every single time a truck crosses a provincial border?
It definitely creates industry friction, I won't deny that, but it allows for vital regional realities.
What do you mean by regional realities?
Well, a province will usually adopt the national model, but they'll modify it to suit local conditions. For instance, the building code in British Columbia needs to account for severe seismic activity.
Oh, right, earthquakes.
Yeah, in a way that the code in Saskatchewan simply doesn't need to.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Or think about Quebec. They need to mandate different snow load capacities for roofs than, say, Southern Ontario.
Got it. So the provinces take the national template, add their regional requirements, and then pass it into law.
Exactly.
That brings up a really mechanical question for me.
Go for it.
How does a province actually adopt these massive technical documents into law? Like, do they literally copy and paste thousands of pages of structural steel load tables into a piece of provincial legislation?
Oh man, doing that would create an absolute legislative nightmare.
I can imagine. The paperwork alone.
Right, because every time a minor technical update happened, the provincial parliament would have to hold a formal vote.
Oh, true. That would gridlock the government.
Totally. So to bypass that, governments use a legal mechanism called incorporation by reference.
Incorporation by reference. Okay, I know that phrase is heavily tested on the NPPE.
It is arguably one of the most important concepts to understand.
Break down exactly how that works mechanically for us.
Sure. So instead of copying the text, a piece of provincial legislation will simply include a line that says something like, all structural steel design must comply with CSA standard S1614.
Just one sentence.
Just one sentence. And the moment that sentence is written into the regulation, the government has reached out, grabbed that external voluntary standard, and instantly given it the full force of law.
Okay, so it functions exactly like a legal hyperlink.
A legally binding hyperlink. Yes, that's a great way to put it.
But wait, I feel like there's a catch.
There is a catch. And here is the critical danger for the practitioner. When a regulation incorporates a standard by reference, it almost always references a specific static edition or year.
Wait, a static year.
Notice I said CSA standard S1614.
Right.
That 14 refers to the 2014 edition of that standard.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
Let me guess the trap.
Take a shot.
If the Canadian Standards Association updates that document and releases a brand new cutting-edge 2021 edition, that new version doesn't automatically become the law.
It absolutely does not.
Wow.
If the provincial regulation still explicitly points to the 2014 edition, then the 2014 edition remains the law of the land.
Even if it's technologically outdated?
Even if it's completely outdated, even if the newer version has demonstrably better safety margins.
It's wild. So what happens if I just use the new one anyway? Because it's safer.
If you decide to build to the new 2021 standard, and in doing so, you violate a conflicting provision buried in the legally adopted 2014 standard, you are technically operating illegally.
That's just wild. Walk me through how a professional actually navigates that.
It takes work.
I'm sitting at my desk, I have a new project. How do I trace those legal breadcrumbs so I don't get sued?
Well, you cannot just reach for the newest, shiniest code book on your shelf.
Which is what everyone wants to do.
Of course. But you have to conduct rigorous due diligence.
Yeah.
You start by identifying the province.
Okay, step one, province.
Then you search the provincial government's statutory registry, or their gazette, for the specific regulations governing your project type.
Okay.
Then you have to read the actual text of the regulation to find exactly which year and edition of the standard they have incorporated by reference.
And that one specific document is my Bible for the project.
That specific document, and only that document, is your legal baseline.
Okay, that clarifies the provincial and federal dynamic really well. But let's bring this down to the street level for a minute.
Okay, down to the street.
Because when I am managing a site, I am rarely dealing with a provincial minister or a federal regulator.
Right, you're usually dealing with the city.
Exactly. I am dealing with a local city inspector. I'm pulling municipal building permits. I'm arguing with the local zoning board.
The fun stuff.
Right. So how does the municipality fit into this constitutional structure? Because you said earlier the Constitution only splits power between the feds and the provinces, right?
That is correct. In the eyes of the Canadian Constitution, municipalities do not exist as sovereign entities.
They don't exist.
Nope. They possess zero independent constitutional authority.
So if they have no inherent power, how are they the ones shutting down my job site and issuing permits?
Delegation.
Let's use an analogy. If the province is like a corporate board of directors that sets the overall strategy of policy for a company, is the municipality just a regional subsidiary?
Oh, that's good.
Like a branch office that handles local logistics but operates entirely under the board's charter?
That is the perfect way to conceptualize it. In law, municipalities are often referred to as creatures of the province.
Creatures of the province. That sounds ominous.
It just means they are corporate entities created by provincial statutes, like a municipal act or a city charter. They only possess the specific limited powers that the provincial government expressly delegates to them.
What kind of powers are usually delegated?
Generally, it's the day-to-day administration of local spaces.
Those zoning and stuff.
Exactly. Provinces delegate the authority to create bylaws regarding local zoning, land use planning, noise control, site servicing, and issuing those building permits you mentioned.
So the municipality acts as the administrative enforcement arm for the provincial building code.
Precisely. They are enforcing the province's rules on the ground.
Okay, let's put these overlapping rules to the test with a chaotic scenario.
I love a chaotic scenario.
Because this is exactly the kind of friction you see on the NPPE.
It is.
Imagine I am designing an industrial retaining wall on a site. My private client contract explicitly says the wall must be 10 feet high.
Okay, 10-foot contract.
But the local municipal zoning bylaw strictly states that retaining walls in this specific zone cannot exceed 8 feet.
Okay, 8-foot city bylaw.
However, a provincial environmental regulation mandates that for this specific soil type, retaining walls must be a minimum of 12 feet high to prevent catastrophic runoff.
Oh, a classic three-way conflict.
Yeah. I have 3 different documents yelling at me. Who wins?
To untangle that mess, you have to apply the strict hierarchy of law.
Hierarchy of law. Okay.
This is a foundational concept you must have memorized for the exam.
Walk me through it.
At the absolute pinnacle is the Constitution of Canada.
Naturally.
Below that, operating in their respective exclusive lanes, are federal statutes and provincial statutes.
Okay, so the big laws.
Right. Below statutes are regulations. Those are the detailed operational rules created under the authority of those statutes.
Okay.
And below regulations are municipal bylaws.
Okay, let me repeat that. Constitution, statutes, regulations, bylaws.
You got it.
Where do my private contract and my engineering standards sit in that list?
Below all the government legislation.
All of it.
Yes. Underneath municipal bylaws are contractual obligations. And at the absolute bottom of the hierarchy are voluntary standards, the technical documents that have not been incorporated by reference into law.
Okay, so let's apply that hierarchy to the retaining wall scenario.
Let's do it.
The provincial regulation dictates a minimum of 12 feet.
Right.
The municipal bylaw caps it at 8 feet.
And because municipalities only operate on delegated authority, a legal concept called the doctrine of paramountcy kicks in.
Doctrine of paramountcy.
Yeah. A municipal bylaw can never conflict with or frustrate the purpose of a provincial statute or regulation.
Ah, I see.
If it does, the provincial law is paramount, and the municipal bylaw is rendered invalid in that specific application.
So the province's 12-foot mandate just completely crushes the city's 8-foot limit.
Yes. The provincial regulation wins. The city cannot enforce that 8-foot limit against you.
Okay, but now look at my contract. My contract demands 10 feet.
Right. But remember where contracts sit in the hierarchy?
Below regulations.
Exactly. You cannot legally fulfill a contract that requires you to violate a provincial regulation. The legal authority overrules the private agreement.
So I have to build the 12-foot wall.
Therefore, to operate legally, you must design a wall that is at least 12 feet high, and you will likely have to renegotiate or void the terms of that contract with your client due to regulatory requirements.
That hierarchy makes it incredibly clear. You always comply upward.
Always.
But let's talk about the consequences of getting this wrong.
The stakes.
Yeah. What if an engineer's failure to follow the right code is just an honest mistake?
Honest mistakes happen.
Say they used the 2019 code instead of the 2014 code incorporated by the province, like we talked about earlier. It wasn't malicious. They were just trying to do good work, but failed to trace the legal breadcrumbs perfectly.
Right.
Are they still on the hook?
Firmly and unequivocally.
Ouch.
Yeah. In professional practice, ignorance of the applicable law is never a defense. Never. The legal system expects you, as a licensed professional, to know the regulatory environment you operate within. The consequences for failing to comply with legally adopted codes are multi-layered and severe.
Break down those layers for me. What is the cascade of ruin if I mess this up?
Well, first, you face professional discipline.
From the association.
Yes. Your provincial regulatory association will investigate you for professional misconduct.
Which means what exactly?
This can result in massive fines, mandatory re-education, or the suspension or outright revocation of your license.
Okay, career-ending type stuff.
Potentially. Second, you face statutory penalties.
From the government.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
government can fine you, and municipal inspectors can issue stop work orders, shutting down the entire project until the non-compliance is rectified.
Which will cost your client an astronomical amount of money.
Millions, potentially.
Okay, that's the regulatory side. What about the civil side, like the people who were actually harmed by the mistake?
That is the third and often most financially devastating layer: civil liability. If your failure to follow the legally mandated code results in property damage, financial loss, or personal injury, you and your firm will be sued for negligence.
And I'm guessing violating a statute doesn't look good in court.
Oh, it's terrible. Because you violated a written statutory code, establishing your fault in court becomes significantly easier for the plaintiff.
Okay, that makes terrifying sense for codes that are written into law.
Right.
But I want to circle back to the very bottom of that hierarchy list you gave me.
The voluntary standards.
Yes, the purely voluntary standards. The advice from the pastry chefs that was never adopted by the province and never written into a contract.
Okay, I follow.
If I ignore one of those voluntary standards and my design fails, I can't be charged with a statutory crime, right?
Understand.
Because it wasn't the law.
You won't face a statutory charge from the government, no.
Okay, phew.
And this is a massive, but that assumption that because it isn't a law, you are safe. That is what gets professionals sued into bankruptcy.
Wait, what?
You are absolutely not safe from civil liability.
How can I be held legally liable in civil court for ignoring a document that had no legal authority whatsoever?
Because of the legal mechanics of tort law, specifically the tort of negligence.
Okay, explain that.
To prove you were negligent in civil court, a plaintiff does not have to prove you broke a statute.
They don't.
No. They only have to prove that you breached the standard of care.
Standard of care.
Right. They have to show that you failed to exercise the level of skill, diligence, and foresight expected of a reasonably competent professional in your exact field under similar circumstances.
But how does a judge who has a law degree, not an engineering degree, determine what a reasonably competent engineer would do?
Well, they look to the profession itself.
Right.
And what represents the collective wisdom of the profession.
Oh, the standards.
Widely accepted industry standards. Even if a standard is not legally mandated by the province, if all the top experts in your discipline agree that this standard represents the safest, most reliable way to design a system,
The court uses it.
the court will adopt that voluntary standard as the benchmark for competence.
Wow. That is a massive paradigm shift.
It changes everything about how you practice.
So even if the province didn't explicitly mandate the rule, if you ignore a widely accepted voluntary standard, the court will use that exact standard as the weapon to prove you are professionally negligent.
Exactly. Due diligence is absolute. It means you can never just look for legal loopholes or do the bare minimum required by written legislation.
It's just not enough.
It's not. It is your professional duty to constantly identify the applicable legal authorities, but also to ensure your work meets the accepted standard of care within the profession itself.
Man, we have navigated an incredible amount of critical ground today.
We really have.
Let's quickly recap the 4 foundational principles you need to lock into your mind for the NPPE.
Good idea.
First, professional regulation and construction codes are primarily provincial responsibilities, governed by the Constitution. Second, municipalities have no inherent power. They are corporate entities acting under provincial delegation, and their bylaws can never contradict provincial law.
Paramountcy.
Check. Third, national model codes are just templates. They are not the law until a province officially adopts them.
A huge trap. Check.
And fourth, the mechanism that turns a standard into a legal mandate is incorporation by reference, and you must always trace the breadcrumbs to find the exact addition currently in force.
Perfectly summarized, those principles will guide you safely through both the exam and your professional practice.
Absolutely.
But, as we close out this topic, I want to leave you with the final lingering thought to dissect.
Lay it on us.
We just established that if a court can and will use a purely voluntary standard to prove you're negligent and hold you financially liable for damages,
Yeah.
is any widely accepted standard in engineering or geoscience truly voluntary?
Oh, wow. That is a heavy thought to carry with you onto a job site.
It puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. Because suddenly, that recipe for the perfect cake, written by the top chefs,
Right.
it really doesn't matter if the local health inspector hasn't officially mandated it yet. If your client gets sick and you knowingly ignore the best recipe available, you are still the one paying the damages.
Exactly.
Well, that wraps up today's deep dive. We want to thank you for joining us on this essential mission through the legal labyrinth.
It's been great.
And as a final reminder, make sure you like and subscribe to hear more and be successful on NPPE Exam. Keep studying, stay curious, and we will